What's good, Aces? Welcome back to the channel. So, Judge Joe Brown, right, sat down with the art of the dialogue, and he is going in on his colleague, Judge Greg Mathis, but he's also taking pot shots at Cardi B and Tyler Perry. And I'm sitting here thinking, Cardi's out promoting her album. She's about to have another baby. And Tyler Perry is, I'm sure, somewhere writing his next movie. Um, but all of them are successful. I'm not understanding why Judge Joe Brown, I don't know if it's like he's retired and he's just bored, but why is he disparaging so many of these people who are minding their business? Because I can guarantee you, Tyler Perry and Cardi B are not thinking about Judge Joe Brown. And if I was Judge Joe Brown after, a very successful career, especially as a legal professional, like, sir, you're a judge, The way that I would be somewhere on a golf course or on an island somewhere living my best retired life, not talking to the art of the dialogue about Cardi B, Greg Mathis, and Tyler Perry. Like, sir, what is going on? But I guess he wanted some attention, so we're gonna give it to him. Let's start with Cardi B. Let's hear what he has to say about her.
Cardi B, how you feel about Cardi B?
Oh God. I don't know her personally, don't want to know her, but what she stands for is not good. And then Cardi B, what did she say about she used to drug her tricks? I mean, come on. I know we had one running for president, but is it supposed to be a good thing that a woman brags about the fact that she was a practicing prostitute and how she turned tricks? And you holding that up as ideation that that wouldn't have, they'd have thrown you out of the boardroom for even suggesting that kind of thing some years ago. Think about it. So why is the American mainstream entertainment media putting her out there like that? You know, I, I know some what used to be black female superstars. Hell, I used to date at least one. And they could be sexy, but they also were ladies. So what happened? What made the translation between being a sexy woman with dignity and refinement, class, and what's now held up is a modern counterpart? Looks like she just been out street walking and waiting on her pimp to pick her up and take her to the club. Think of the young girls that are ideating on this. They will be mothers, and what's that doing to future generations? They will be grandmothers, and what's that doing to future generations? And oh, by the way, once it's on the net, it doesn't go away. So, understand in 10, 15 years, somebody's sons are going to be embarrassed on the playground. Hey, man, I saw your mama the other night. No, man, for real, man. Check this video out, man. Man, that's your mama, man. Or that's your grandmama. This rainbow.
Okay, before we get to what he said about Judge Mathis, let me just interject and give my 2 cents because I feel like Cardi B is somebody who has never tried to shy away from who she is, who she was, her past, etc. One reason why people like her so much is her authenticity. And maybe because Joe Brown has spent his entire career literally judging other people. that he considers himself, the moral high ground, or um, he can look down on her. But this woman has owned her story, good, bad, or indifferent. And to be honest, he's talking about the oldest job um, known to mankind, allegedly. But this isn't anything new. Cardi, I'm sure, will not be the first nor the last to do half of the things that she's, done. A lot of people who have done them probably don't speak on it, especially not in a public, platform. As big as she's had, she has been open and transparent about her highs and her lows, about her valleys and her mountains. She got it out the mud, and she's been, taking us with, taking us. We are in the group chat, whether we want to be or not. She's been taking us with her, regardless. But here's the thing: if you don't like what she has to say, you do not have to listen. You can literally keep scrolling, keep, don't stream her music, don't support, whatever. But to condemn this woman who, um, she got a house, she lived, she did the best she could with what she had, you know. She made the money, she didn't let it make her. I don't know. I mean, Cardi is somebody who half the time I wish that she would keep her private life private, especially with the whole Offset drama. But I feel like people can see somebody who is true to who they are, someone who has overcome adversity, who has, um, and she talks about, the struggles that like her mother and her grandmother went through. And she said, how dare I be lazy? Because these women, they didn't have multi millions, they didn't have, hired help. They were in, small houses with multiple kids. And, she said like her grandmother had a farm, and you know what I mean? She was doing what she needed to do to feed her family. She's like, I have multi millions, and she's still pregnant out there on tour, on stage. Out, she was out in the street the other day promoting her album. One thing he cannot say about Cardi is that she doesn't have a strong work ethic. Okay, she's a hustler. Period. Now, everything that she did in the past, I'm sure, was not necessarily, always ethical or, moral according to his standards. But he's also been caught up in some drama in the past. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't walk around judging people. Take off that robe, sir. Aren't you retired? Give it a rest. And Cardi is not one of the defendants in your courtroom. So, judge not lest she be judged. Oh, that's all I'm saying. Yeah, Cardi did some things, this may be questionable in the morality, arena, but I feel like we all have. You know what I'm saying? And if she can continuously evolve into a better human being, then all of us can. So speaking of, evolution and a judge, this is his colleague, another judge. Now, I thought, and this is just me, I don't know a whole lot about the legal profession, because I did start out college pre-law, but then I switched it because it was just that's not what I wanted to do with my life, and I'm really glad about that. But um, except sometimes I do miss the potential money that lawyers make. But I thought that the legal profession didn't necessarily always prosecute each other or talk down on each other, right? Like I felt like, cops protect cops, lawyers protect other lawyers. I mean, unless it's something like, really heinous. But typically, judges don't speak out, at least publicly, on other judges. I'm like, I don't know if Joe Brown's having a really bad day. He's like bored in retirement. He's being confronted with his own mortality. I don't know what it is, but he said that Judge Mathis, who just recently got his wife back, right? He was, on his Ain't Too Proud to Beg tour, but he got his wife back. Congratulations to them. He called him a punk. and said that he has a rainbow fixation. So I don't know if that's the reason why um, the Mrs. Mathis needed to step away from her very long term marriage for a while. I don't know, but even if he did, that's their business. Like Joe Brown is, he on a roll. Anyway, let's hear what he had to say about. Wait, hold on 1 second. Sorry, let me cue this up real quick. I'm like, he is just really like in his feelings.
That's Mathis. So, yeah, that's Mathis. He can take his punk self somewhere else and go deal with his rainbow fixation. But all his children rainbow, man, what have you not been doing? Have you noticed at home with Judge Mathis with all of that rainbow stuff that they push? See, Hollywood tried to get me to do the same thing. I said, hell no, you're on your own with that. I'm not doing it, but he did. See, he punked out and joined the gang, and then he says he got out when his mama got sick. So he does his thing, and one of the most embarrassing moments I ever had as a black attorney or as a black man was in front of 5 members of the U.S. Supreme Court and the Second Circuit Court of the Judiciary. They were having a judicial conference. They had invited me, Judge Napolitano, and Judge Mathis to lecture them for 2 hours on television in the courtrooms because at that point, 20-some years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court and the appellate courts of the United States and other courts were concerned about opening the courts back up again to broadcast media. He declined the show and he said, I'm sorry, I'm rehearsing for a gospel play. So I found that embarrassing. You're doing a church gospel play and you miss out on an opportunity to address the Second Circuit Court of Appeals for the United States. I think there are 3 or 4 former members of that circuit that are on the U.S. Supreme Court right now. The Supreme Court itself is part of that circuit for educational and continuing legal educational purposes. And you missed the opportunity to do that because you're in a gospel rehearsal. That's clown show stuff. And then that crap he does about endorsing LGBTQIA plus on that At Home with Mathis. And the fact that when I was on, I was number 1 and 2, and he was down 150, 160 in the ratings, flunkying out, doing what he did, acting ignorant. And that's why he lasted so long. I was number 1 and number 2, the number 1 money-making show for CBS that they bragged to their stockholders was making the whole operation so profitable, and he was down there. He's one of those shows that makes low-level commercial money, and you can keep on forever, and he was amenable to pushing the rainbow code.
Okay. A few things, right? So I don't know what he's talking about with the Rainbow Coalition. I think I've heard that his son might have a partner and that he supports his son. But how was that? I mean, okay, so Judge Joe Brown is homophobic, but I don't understand why he feels the need to say all of this now, right? Like, why is he speaking out on another judge, you know, in his ratings? Like, was he a threat? Was he jealous of him? Or, I don't know. He just seems so, like, angry and upset and bitter. I watched a finance professor actually on TikTok. His name is like Professor Zhuang, I think his name is. But he was basically saying that consumerism and capitalism is slavery perfected. And what he meant by that is that you become a slave to, they call them like golden handcuffs. So all these different, like assets that people buy and debt that people accumulate after, going into college and all that stuff. He said, but even after, you're at the top of your earning potential, um, and you accumulate, this big house and, fancy cars and, designer, whatever. He said that, you do all this to keep up with the Joneses, and capitalism creates competition. It doesn't make you happy. People aren't collectivists and, collaborating like they used to. They're not unionizing, especially not with this administration. They're trying to bust, all the unions. He's like, but after you gain all that stuff, the big house, the fancy car, etc., he's like, does it make you, want to be closer to your neighbors and your community and all this stuff? He's like, no, you now see, people as competition. That's why they say, keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. And so I feel like that's what, Judge Joe Brown is saying with Judge, Greg Mathis. Like, he's talking about the rating system and how he was higher than, the ratings, and calling him a punk and all this stuff. Like, sir, you are too old and too wealthy to be, talking about the ratings of, CBS and the money that you made for your shareholders and all this stuff, and trying to disparage a fellow judge. Let me tell you something. In a country where they are currently trying to strip away, civil rights, they've already rolled back affirmative action and DEI, all these things, and they're targeting black men. I mean, the target on our backs, black folks, has never gone away. They're just momentarily focused on immigrants, and like the farmers are suffering. Everybody's kind of going through it. And after you have been so successful for all these years, now in the year of our Lord 2025, you want to come out and talk about another black male judge? Like that, for you guys to have, survived a system that quite literally put targets on your back as young black men, and both became successful judges on TV, mind you. Um, that's no small feat. That's why I was saying I was surprised that he was going, so hard at one of his colleagues, especially another judge. But I don't know, he just sounds so old and bit. If I had the wealth and not necessarily the fame, I'm not a big, fan of that, but just, the successful career and the wealth that he has, I would be enjoying my last years here on earth, not sitting down disparaging another, judge. That's a colleague. Well, last but not least, he is going after Mr. Tyler Perry. Let's
And
take
if
a
you
listen.
listen to what Tyler Perry does, he's essentially anti-masculine. He downs straight men, particularly straight black men at every opportunity in his productions. And if you watch some of his stuff, check out some of his things. What's the one with I'm Black or something like that, where the guy is dying of some fatal disease and he runs this cosmetic firm, and his brother came up with the formula. The brother had problems with it, but the guy that made the money for the family didn't care about the fact that it was carcinogenic. It would kill people. So now that guy is trying to be gay, so he gets this plain woman who was a stripper, and he starts making her friend, and he sets it up so she becomes the person that helps run the company rather. So Tyler Perry's favorite subject is bad mouthing straight men, especially black straight men, and making them look like villains. Meanwhile, somebody gay comes in and helps out somebody that's a plain Jane girl or foolish woman, and they prosper in the end. That's what he does. So when you look at his art, you ask, does it mirror his reality? And if somebody's got a fetish style taste for something, is that what he's prone to do, to take advantage of a situation? particularly since so much of what he produces and directs has a psychological flavor of having been somebody who was an abused child or somebody in his youth got taken advantage of. So a lot of what goes wrong with this particular alt culture is that it has formed an alliance with people who are abusers of children, pedophiles, and such like. So you might expect to see fantasy reflecting reality and the opportunity to vest the same reality on somebody else being taken. Background circumstances.
So I take it you're not a big fan of Tyler Perry. How do you feel about him personally?
I think he's poisonous. The worst thing we've had happen is, I know Flip Wilson used to do it. It wasn't that it wasn't done, but he institutionalized this tranny thing with Medea. The industry pushed the hell out of that because part of their agenda was to legitimate and popularize and get accepted this transvestitism. It's a sickness, but they made it normal. And quite frankly, the character Medea in the real world would probably be somebody that would need a really serious beat down for the things that were normalized through the presentation.
Now he trying to beat down Medea. Tyler already said that he was, imitating the women in his life, like his grandmother, his aunts. Okay. And that's not anything new either. Flip Wilson, Martin Lawrence, Shanae is an iconic character. Well, Martin played multiple women. Eddie Murphy, with the clumps. Anyway, Judge Joe Brown, for whatever reason, I can't even agree with his assessment because, if he would have said that Tyler Perry, makes the dark-skinned men, black men in his movies the villain, and then he has the light-skinned savior come in. I mean, I can think of multiple. Rick Fox with the movie with what was it? The family? No, that wasn't the family reunion. That was Boris Kudrow, and then Shamar Moore with oh, that was Meet the Browns. Okay, so Meet the Browns had Rick Fox as a light skinned savior. Then we have Boris Kudrow with the family reunion. Then we have Shamar Moore. You know what I mean? He came in with the braids. Shout out to the wig for the braided wig for Shamar Moore. They should have just let him wear his natural hair. With Diary of a Mad Black Woman. I mean, Tyler Perry definitely, whether he has his, he's closeted or not, because unfortunately he's being sued and we don't know what, you know, who he chooses to, partner with. We do know that he has a son, so maybe it's, he's bi. We don't know. We do not know. What we do know is, unfortunately, he's, facing lawsuits. Christian Keys, came out. He never said who it was, but he said it was a black billionaire. There's only a handful, the Carters, Rihanna, Tyler, Oprah. I can't think of anybody else. Robert Johnson. But yeah. And so once that check cleared, though, we never heard from Christian again. Shout out to Christian Keys. But it's just like, Joe Brown is sitting there just being so, overly critical and judgmental. It's like everybody can't, go to law school and, take the route that you and Judge Mathis did. And even with Judge Mathis, you're talking about, he's the Rainbow Coalition and calling him a punk. Now, how is Judge Mathis a punk? He's been married to the same woman for, decades. and she stepped away for 2 seconds, and he was, down on his knees like Boys to Men, you know what I mean, in the sand, Jodeci. He said, when Jodeci, the song, it's been an hour since you've been gone. That was Judge Mathis. So come back home. That was him. Leather wearing in the summertime, Jodeci. He got his woman back though, so shout out to him. But it's like the real person, the real um, sad situation. The real tragedy is after all these years and after all that time on television and after all that hard work, instead of you enjoying your twilight years, you're sitting down with the art of the dialogue, disparaging all these people who are self-made success stories. Tyler Perry went from being homeless in his car to a billionaire. Do you know how rare that is? Forget him being, like he said, he had to overcome, trauma from being an abused child, but being a black man. I mean, I don't care that he had to put on a dress to do it to imitate, his what he said his Medea's a mixture of his grandmother and his aunties. Um, but like I said, that's been done so many times before. Flip Wilson, Martin Lawrence, Eddie Murphy, et cetera, et cetera. They're not billionaires with a B, because that's not the only thing that Tyler Perry does. Tyler also writes his movies and TV shows. He directs his movies and TV shows. He's a one-man band, and he put on these plays and productions before he went mainstream. He got it out the mud, similarly to Cardi B, so that's something that you can't take away from these people, whether you agree with their lifestyle. I mean, that's something completely different. I'm sure that, people might not necessarily agree with your lifestyle because it's not squeaky clean either. So, you know, I just I wish Judge Joe Brown all the best. I feel like I said, it's really sad after all these years and after all that hard work and success that instead of being on a beach somewhere, or surrounded by friends and loved ones enjoying his retirement, he's here disparaging other people. But anyway, you guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Please be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk with you in the next one. Take care, Aces. Bye.